Welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. A couple of the go-tos that happen in the political discussion that are very annoying intellectual shortcuts is the tendency that some people have to blame everything on one of two things. Half the country's problems can either be attributed to racism or climate change. That's the two things that of all the grievances and the gripes and the programs and the protests, I think that's the two main ones. Racism, climate change. If we can dispense with those two myths, and not the myth that climate doesn't change. Of course climate changes, but it's, not in the way that all these people who are gluing their hand to the middle of the street think. And then also the myth of racism, as if we're just a bunch of bloodthirsty, foaming at the mouth racist monsters on the cusp of murder based on someone's skin color, or even discrimination based on, most people don't care. There's not enough racists that one person elected to any office at any level in this country says, yeah, I'm a racist. Not one. So the idea that either of those are some pressing problem that require urgent action, and we got to spend trillions of dollars and up into our economy and create all these programs and give over all this power to centralized government authorities to battle it, stop the weather change, and if you just tax a little more. It's all silly, right? Well, you think it can't get any sillier. What's climate change being blamed on now? I mean, killing languages, killing indigenous languages. I thought that was weird. If you've been listening to the show, if you're an all-day listener, if you listen every day, you've noticed over the last 2 or 3 weeks, all of a sudden, ton of climate change stories. Is this related to the election? Maybe. I don't know. I checked, and there's not one of those international conferences coming up till November, but after the election. So they're not gearing up for that. I don't know where this is all coming from. And so I looked at the story that I saw for you yesterday about how climate change is killing indigenous languages. And they kept linking back to this one story from NPR last year. Oh, wait, so there's no new information on this. You guys, I've just saw two different stories on two different platforms about the same thing a year later. Well, let's go back to that original story and look, because it sounds like I'm making it up. How can they connect these two things, James? How can they say climate change is killing off rare indigenous languages? Well, I'll let you hear the first, minute or two of this 4-minute report. I definitely can't sit through the whole thing, though.
Right now, someone is speaking or thinking in a language that is on the verge of disappearing. Of the world's roughly 7,000 spoken languages, one dies every 40 days, according to one estimate. Languages like Babanki, spoken in Cameroon, or Nalik, heard on an island in Papua New Guinea. And some of the places where rare languages are the most concentrated are also most vulnerable to climate change. Linguists call global warming the final nail in the coffin for more than half of humanity's languages.
All right. I hate when they make statements like that. Linguists say climate change is the final nail in the coffin. All of them say that? Do half of them say that? Did you talk to one of them that said, did you talk to two of them that said, how do you get to make giant sweeping generalizations like that? I bet you most linguists don't have a strong opinion on climate change, and they definitely hadn't put the two together. Climate change is causing languages to disappear. When you go try and look up how many languages, when he says, languages disappear every 40 days, that means 100 years ago, there's a lot more languages than there are today. That means 200 years ago, a lot more languages than there are today. 2,000 years ago, a lot more languages than there are today. 5,000 years ago, a lot more languages than there are today. So languages have always been decreasing. The more, we got colonial and bigger, and societies got grander and had further reach, and you actually could travel further than your tribe or the adjacent tribe. Languages have been consolidating the entire time throughout the written record of humanity. But just this last 200 years of the Industrial Revolution, that's what's killing them off? Stop it, people. You sound silly.
Karen McVie wrote about this for The Guardian. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start with a specific example. Tell us about the island nation of Vanuatu.
Vanuatu is a South Pacific island nation. It's very small, but it has 110 languages are spoken there, which is the highest density of languages in the world.
And it's also one of the nations most vulnerable to climate change.
Exactly. It is also one of the countries most at risk of sea level rise and climate change. And here you find this kind of sort of perfect storm Linguists say that many small linguistic communities, there's only 100 people speak the language or something like that, are on islands and coastlines vulnerable to hurricanes, to weather and sea level rise.
Says this theory defies logic in the fact that it gets blamed. It's so ubiquitous. It's so powerful. It's so all-encompassing that it gets blamed for so many things, like the bleaching of the coral reefs and the destruction of the Great Barrier Reefs, or we're having sea level rise, or we're having the destruction of languages. So you can just add that to the other list. We have rainstorms, we have flooding, we have droughts, we have hurricanes, we have the absence of severe weather. Everything can be traced back to climate change. And everything in climate change can be traced back to the expulsion of human-created CO2. It's just a little too perfect that if you can control the burning of fossil fuels, if you can control the creation of CO2, well, then you get to own and control all the major industries, all the major factors of production. What's the definition of socialism? When the government owns and controls all the major means of production? Oh, Jesus, that sounds like you just shortcutted your way to the economic outfit that you wanted, but couldn't get otherwise. Huh. So yeah, disappearing languages, climate change's fault, which makes it your fault because, I don't know, you drive a gas car instead of a plug-in car. These things are so silly. It's beyond how does anyone say that with a straight face? How does anyone get funding for that? How does anyone get a job in academia saying goofy things like that? How does it get on NPR? And how does anybody hear that and not go, people are off your rocker. Y'all really need to drop it. This is silliness. Coming up next, we have another episode of First Impressions. This is where we review the first episode of 2 TV shows and tell you if they're any good. This week, you're going to hear about the first episode of Twin Peaks and Gravity Falls. That's next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.